Nora James, 30 years old, never expected to hear her father cry. Frank James had always been a man of stone, steady, controlled, unmoved. But last week his voice cracked over the phone, trembling as he said her name. Nora froze where she stood in her Beacon Hill kitchen. 2 years earlier, when she had been the one crying, terrified after being told she had stage 3 cancer, Frank hadn't shed a single tear for her. He had only said words that cut her deeper than the diagnosis itself. Now he needed her, and she already knew her answer would be 4 simple words. Before everything fell apart, Nora had lived a quiet, orderly life. She worked as a senior graphic designer at a mid-size Boston agency with exposed brick walls and overpriced espresso. She had earned every promotion through grit, not connections. Her small Somerville apartment wasn't glamorous, but it was hers and she loved it. Her routine was predictable. Coffee at 6:30, gym on Mondays, dinner with her friend Dana every Thursday. She was building a life she could be proud of, one step at a time, until the phone call from her doctor's office arrived and shattered everything she thought she understood. She remembered every detail of that moment. The lukewarm coffee she'd forgotten about, the way the sunlight bounced off the glass conference room divider, the way her hands shook as the nurse said, "Miss James, Dr. Mason wants you to come in tomorrow at 8 a.m. to discuss your biopsy results." Nora already knew then. Good news never required an early morning appointment. The next day, Dr. Mason looked her straight in the eyes and spoke gently. "Nora, it's stage 3 breast cancer. Aggressive. We need to begin treatment right away." Nora felt her body detach, watching herself from far away. Still floating outside her own body, Nora heard Dr. Mason ask, "Do you have someone who can drive you home?" She thought of Dana but didn't want to interrupt her hospital shift. She thought of coworkers but knew none were close enough to call for this. Against her better judgment, she whispered, "I'll call my dad." Growing up, no one questioned Frank James. His voice was law. Even after years of feeling invisible beside her younger brother Brian, Nora had still been conditioned to reach for him in moments of fear, because daughters are taught that fathers will catch them. Nora stepped into the hallway, sat on a bench and dialed Frank. Her hands trembled so badly she missed the contact twice. When he finally answered, he sounded annoyed. "Nora, I'm in the middle of something." "What is it?" She swallowed hard. "I have cancer. Stage 3. For a moment there was only silence. Slow, heavy, cruel. She waited for something, a gasp, a question, a hint of concern. Instead, Frank finally said, "We'll talk later. Your brother's wedding planning is taking all our time right now." And then he hung up. Nora stared at her phone, stunned into stillness. Nora sat on that hospital bench for almost an hour, her phone still in her hand, her father's final words echoing in her mind. "We can't deal with this right now." Around her, patients walked past, nurses rushed by, families whispered and held each other tightly. No one looked at her. She felt like she was dissolving into the white walls. When she finally stood, she forced herself to inhale deeply. Her life had just split into a before and after, yet the world continued moving as if nothing had changed. She took a screenshot of the call log. 2 weeks later, Nora began chemotherapy. She drove herself to the hospital, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles whitened. The infusion center was bright and too cheerful, as if someone had tried to decorate sadness. Patients sat in recliners with blankets and visitors beside them. A nurse named Rose greeted her gently and guided her to chair 7. "First time?" she asked. Nora nodded. She looked around. Every chair had someone sitting beside the patient. A spouse. A parent. A friend. Every chair except hers. She pulled out her phone, typed a message to her mother and hit send. "Starting chemo today. I'm scared," she had written. Her mother didn't reply until Nora was already home hours later, sick on her bathroom floor. "Hang in there, honey. I'm with Laura picking wedding flowers. Roses or lilies?" Nora stared at the message, her stomach churning for reasons beyond chemo. She typed, "Roses are nice," then put her phone face down. That night she cried until she had no strength left. She wasn't crying about cancer anymore. She was crying because she finally understood she would be fighting this alone. So she took a screenshot and added it to the folder. It was during her 3rd chemo session that Nora met Dana Price. Dana, a nurse practitioner with sharp humor and warm eyes, sat beside her and said, "You're always alone." "Why?" Nora looked down at her 4-line. My family is busy. Dana didn't look convinced. Busy doing what? Nora hesitated, then admitted quietly, my brother's wedding. Dana's eyebrows rose in disbelief. While you're in chemo? Nora nodded. Something in Dana softened. Listen, she said gently. We keep visitor logs here. Every name, every visit. Some patients request copies later. You should too. Nora didn't understand yet, but she listened. A few days later, Nora requested her first visitor log. She expected nothing and still felt shattered seeing the truth in black and white. Visitor. None. Over and over again. 36 entries. 36 times she sat alone while her family compared cake flavors and argued about seating charts. Meanwhile, her body fought for survival. Nora placed the paper on her kitchen counter and stared at it until the letters blurred. She wasn't angry yet. Anger would come later. What she felt then was clarity, sharp and cold. She saved the document in her growing folder labeled simply, Family. October approached and with it Brian's wedding. Nora hadn't been invited to be a bridesmaid. She hadn't been invited to participate at all, not even to read a poem or help seat guests. She still considered going quietly just to sit in the back and pretend her family cared. But one afternoon Frank called. His tone was clipped, businesslike. Nora, your mother and I think it's best if you don't come to the wedding. Nora felt something break inside her. He continued, you don't look well. Your hair, your weight. It's Brian's big day. We don't want distractions. Nora whispered, I understand. And she did. She understood her place clearly. An inconvenience, a blemish on a polished family picture. The wedding went on without her. She saw photos online only because her aunt shared them publicly. Her father beamed in every shot. Her mother cried dramatically in champagne silk. Brian and Laura glowed as if they lived perfect lives untouched by illness. Nora lay in bed recovering from round 4 of chemo as she scrolled. Her body ached, but not from treatment. She screenshot the photos and closed the app for good. Some wounds didn't need reopening. 3 weeks later, bills began arriving. Insurance covered much, but much wasn't the same as enough. Deductibles. Copays. Medications classified as non-essential. Nora calculated everything 3 times, but the total remained the same. $47,000. Money she didn't have. She sold her car, canceled subscriptions, cut groceries to the bare minimum. Still not enough. The night she finally asked her father for help, she stared at the text for 20 minutes before hitting send. Dad, the medical bills are too high. Can I borrow some money? I'll pay it back. His reply came 2 hours later and it stunned her. We just finished paying for Brian's wedding. We don't have extra right now. Try a personal loan. That was all he wrote. No concern. No apology. No, how are you feeling? Nora read the message 3 times hoping she had misunderstood. She hadn't. She applied for a high-interest loan, heart pounding as she submitted the forms. Survival came with a price and apparently she alone would bear it. That night she sat on her couch, bald patches showing through her thinning hair, and she whispered into the empty room, I am not worth the price of a wedding. The worst night came after her 4th chemo cycle. By 2 a.m., Nora lay trembling on her bathroom floor, her body rejecting everything in violent waves. Tufts of her blonde hair covered the tiles like fallen leaves. She panicked and called her mother. No answer. She called again. Voicemail. He tried a 3rd time. Nothing. At 3:15 a.m., desperate and shaking, she texted Dana, I think I need help. Dana arrived 40 minutes later, still in scrubs. She held Nora steady, stayed through every tremor, every sob. When morning came, Nora finally understood which people were truly family. Nora's mother finally returned her call at 10:23 a.m., long after Dana had cleaned the bathroom and forced Nora to sip warm tea. Sweetie, I saw you called, her mother said lightly. My phone was on silent. Laura and I were at the spa, post-wedding stress relief. You know how it is. Nora looked at her reflection in the mirror. Pale skin, hollow eyes, and bald patches she couldn't hide. It was nothing, Nora whispered. Her mother sighed in relief. Good. Call any time. After hanging up, Nora stared at the phone, then quietly added the missed call log to her folder. Months passed. Treatment continued. Nora's hair fell out completely. Her eyebrows thinned. Her body weakened. But her will hardened. She went to every chemo session alone. She navigated medical bills alone. She learned to rest between exhaustion and nausea. Dana stayed close, checking on her, sitting with her during infusions, driving her home when she was too weak to stand. "You don't owe them anything," Dana said once, gently braiding the scarf around Nora's bare scalp. Nora didn't answer. She wasn't ready to process that truth yet. But she held on to the words the way drowning people hold on to air. By the time Brian's wedding photos faded from social media, Nora had accepted something painful but necessary. Her family would not show up. Not once, not for anything. So she began documenting everything. Texts, call logs, medical records. Not out of revenge but to protect herself from the lies she knew would someday come. When she finally finished treatment months later, she rang the hospital bell alone and cried into her hands. She whispered, "I did it," to no one in particular. In that moment she knew she had saved her own life in more ways than one. 2 years later Nora was cancer-free. Dr. Mason smiled at her and said, "No evidence of disease." Nora left the office and stood in the parking garage crying for nearly an hour. Release, not joy, not grief, just release. Her life looked different now. She had been promoted to art director. Her boss valued her work and treated her like a human being. She moved to a condo overlooking the Charles River. She bought a navy scarf to celebrate surviving. And she kept Dana close, her chosen sister, the one person who never once disappeared when things got hard. Her biological family, however, had faded into yearly text messages. Happy birthday, a New Year's emoji, nothing meaningful. Nora accepted it. She didn't need them anymore. Then, on a quiet Thursday evening as she cooked salmon in her new kitchen, her phone lit up with a name she hadn't seen in 2 years. Frank James. Nora hesitated. The salmon began to sizzle too loudly, but she couldn't move. He eventually picked up. Frank's voice was thin, trembling. "Nora, I need to see you." She gripped the counter, bracing herself. Another pause. I've been diagnosed with something." Nora steadied her breath. "What is it, Dad?" she asked. Frank hesitated as if the words were too heavy. "Parkinson's disease," he finally said. "Early stage, but it's progressing." Nora closed her eyes. She pictured his steady hands, the ones that never trembled when he dismissed her pain. Now they were failing him. "I need my family around me," he continued. "We're having dinner Sunday. Your mother, Brian, Laura. I want you there. We need to discuss the future." Nora stared at the stove, the salmon now burning. He hadn't even asked if she was healthy. Just what he needed. For 2 days, Nora wrestled with a storm of emotions. Anger, curiosity, grief she couldn't name. She researched Parkinson's until midnight. It wasn't a death sentence, but it demanded long-term support. Support Frank assumed she would provide. The daughter with no husband. The daughter with no children. The daughter who always swallowed her pain. She called Dana late Friday night. "You're going?" Dana asked gently. Nora nodded even though Dana couldn't see. "I need to hear it from them directly," she said. "I need them to tell me what they want, to my face." Dana exhaled. "Then bring your folder." On Sunday, Nora dressed with intention. Black slacks. A cream blouse. The navy scarf, the one she bought to celebrate surviving. She told herself it was armor. Before leaving, she opened the folder on her phone. Call logs, texts, visitor sheets. 2 years of truth. She didn't plan to show them. They were simply her reminder not to fall for rewritten history. The drive to her childhood home took 40 minutes. The white colonial looked exactly the same. Perfect lawn, polished windows, a home that photographed well but loved poorly. She sat in her car for 5 minutes, gathering strength. Inside, everything looked frozen in time. Nora's mother greeted her with a bright but brittle smile. "Nora, you look lovely," she said, pulling her into a hug scented with Chanel No. 5. Nora stepped into the dining room and saw the old mahogany table set with crystal and silver, as if perfection could disguise the truth beneath it. Brian stood and hugged her. Laura, 5 months pregnant, watched quietly from her seat. Then Nora saw Frank at the head of the table. His left hand trembled against the tablecloth. His eyes, once cold and certain, looked afraid. Dinner was quiet, tense. After the plates were cleared, Frank pushed himself to stand. His body resisted and panic flickered in his eyes. "I'll get to the point," he said. "My condition will worsen. I'll need help, Daily help. His gaze fixed on Nora. We've discussed it. Your mother, Brian, Laura. And we all agree you're the logical choice to move back home. You work from home. You don't have a family of your own. It's time you contributed to this family. Nora's pulse quickened, but her voice stayed steady. She listened, letting the weight of their expectations settle. Brian cleared his throat, unable to meet Nora's eyes. It makes sense, Nora, he said softly. I have work, the baby coming. Laura will need me. Nora noticed he didn't say he wanted to help, only that he couldn't. Her mother added gently, your father needs you, sweetheart. This is what daughters do. That sentence hit Nora like a stone. This is what daughters do. She folded her hands in her lap, feeling a familiar heaviness tighten in her chest. She had heard those words her whole life, words meant to keep her quiet, compliant, useful. But things had changed. Nora inhaled deeply. Before I answer, she said, I want to ask something. Frank blinked, unsettled. People didn't question him. When was the last time you asked if I was okay? Silence fell instantly. Her mother's face stiffened. Brian looked down. Frank frowned, confused. What are you talking about? Nora kept her voice calm. When was the last time you asked if I survived cancer? If I was still in remission? Do you know what my last scan said? No one spoke. Their silence told her everything. She reached slowly into her purse, heart steady as stone. Purse, heart steady as stone. I had stage 3 cancer, Nora said. 6 months of chemotherapy. Do you know how many times any of you visited me? She set her phone on the table and opened the visitor logs. None, she whispered. Her mother reached for the phone, trembling. Brian leaned closer, his face draining of color as he read. Line after line, visitor. None. I texted you, Mom, Nora continued. During chemo. You asked me about wedding flowers. She turned to Brian. I asked Dad for help with bills. He told me to get a loan. Her father stiffened. Nora, that's true, she cut in. Nora unlocked her folder and slid her phone into the center of the table. 36 chemo visits. 0 visitors. Here are the call logs. The messages. Every time you ignored me. Megan slowly placed a hand on her stomach, staring at the evidence with wide eyes. Her mother choked out, We didn't know, you knew, Nora said quietly. You just didn't care enough to show up. Frank swallowed hard, his voice shaking. That was the past. What matters now is that I'm sick. I need you. Nora sat back, watching her family crumble beneath the weight of documented truth. The room went still. Frank tried again, his voice cracking. Nora, I handled things poorly, but we need to move forward. I need a caregiver. You're my daughter. Nora almost laughed at the irony. Forward, she repeated. Dad, I told you I had cancer and you said you couldn't deal with it. I begged for help and you told me to get a loan. Her mother covered her mouth, sobbing now. Brian whispered, Dad, you really said that? Frank's trembling hand pressed into the table. I didn't mean, you meant it enough to say it, Nora replied softly. Nora stood slowly, smoothing the front of her blouse. He was calm, so calm it frightened them. I'm not angry, she said. I'm simply done. Her mother reached for her hand. Please, Nora. We're family. Nora stepped back. Family shows up. Family answers the phone at 2 a.m. Family visits the hospital at least once. She looked at Brian. And family doesn't ask the daughter who survived cancer alone to give up her life while everyone else stays comfortable. Brian lowered his head, shame pulling at his features. Laura watched quietly, her expression shifting with quiet understanding. Frank's voice cracked again. I'm scared, Nora. I don't know what's coming. I need you. Something inside Nora softened for just a moment. She saw not the man who abandoned her, but a man afraid of losing control. A man finally experiencing the helplessness she had known too well. But compassion didn't erase truth, and it didn't erase boundaries. 2 years ago, Nora said gently, I called you crying. I told you I had cancer. And you said you couldn't deal with this right now. Frank's tears fell freely. Nora took one step closer. So here's my answer. I can't deal with this right now. 4 words. Quiet. Precise. The exact echo of the sentence that once shattered her heart. Her mother gasped. Brian stared in disbelief. Frank clutched the edge of the table as if the words had knocked the air from his lungs. But Nora didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. He didn't need to. She simply collected her purse, lifted her navy scarf from the back of the chair and said softly, "Goodbye." Then she turned and walked toward the front door. No one moved. No one breathed. The truth had settled too heavily. Outside, the cool air wrapped around her like freedom. She heard footsteps behind her, her mother crying, Brian calling her name, but Nora didn't turn around. She opened her car door, looked back once and said, "Love isn't something you offer only when you need something." Then she got inside and drove away. In her rearview mirror, she saw Frank slumping in the doorway, held up by Brian, while Laura watched with a hand pressed to her belly. Nora didn't look back again. For the first time in her life, she wasn't running away. She was moving forward. Months passed. Frank's condition worsened, and Brian became his daily caretaker, missing work, losing opportunities, forced to shoulder the weight their parents had always expected Nora to carry. One day Nora received a long message from her mother. Real accountability, not excuses. Weeks later, a shaky handwritten letter arrived from Frank, admitting he had chosen Brian's happiness over her survival and would regret it for the rest of his life. Nora didn't reply, but she kept the letter. In her Beacon Hill condo, surrounded by a life she built herself, she finally understood. Family isn't blood. Family is who shows up.